welcome to this week's edition of the Research Sofa. I'm here today with Gordon Johnston, who's a peer researcher and has been working with our network since the network started, and also more recently become an important member of the OWLS project. So I'll pass you over to Gordon, who'll just tell you a little bit about how and why he became involved in the network. So welcome, Gordon.
Hi, Emily. Thank you. So I got involved in the network first because I was invited to speak at the launch event about peer research. I have lived experience of mental ill health, having been diagnosed with bipolar disorder a good number of years ago. And since then, I've been involved in various third sector organisations and done a fair bit of peer research working with various universities, mainly in Scotland, but throughout the UK. I was really taken by the whole notion of closing the gap, because the whole idea of people dying 20 years earlier, when you actually have lived experience, that's not a theoretical thing, you know. That's me and people like me they're talking about. So it's my life expectancy that's shorter. It's my friend's life expectancy, and I think I said at the launch event, you know, over the last few years, I've unfortunately lost a few friends and people I know who've been involved in mental health networks. All have been men in their 50s and 60s, and all have died because of physical health issues. So this is a real issue for me.
Yeah, so we were really inspired by your the talk that you gave at the launch event, and you know, I think that was probably for many people one of the most important talks that they heard at the event, and really inspired people and really gave people the thought, you know, this is why we're doing the network. This is what it's all about. It's about real people. It's not just about somebody over there who we haven't met and we don't know. There's a real person come up and stood and told us this is really important that we do this work. And so, you know, I got feedback after that event that hearing you speak was really, really important and beneficial. So we still thank you for that. And so more recently, because of having met you a few times at network events and things, we asked you if you'd help us with the OWLS project. And I know you spoke to our colleague Suzanne on the phone about what we were doing and shared some thoughts with both me and Suzanne. And I just wondered if you had any reflections on the OWLS project and its importance.
I think it's incredibly important, and we all know that lockdown and some of the responses to COVID have had really quite profound effects on some people. You know, of course, we mustn't generalise, and there are some people who are actually, you know, quite happy with lockdown, quite happy being at home, not having to deal with stressful situations. But I think for most people, there is a real negative in the effect that being at home all the time has had, the kind of the economic impact with so many people not being able to work. And you know, it's okay, government saying, well, you're on furlough, you get 80% of your wages, but you know, for a lot of people, put it the other way around, a 20% pay cut is quite substantial for a lot of people and a lot of families. So that's having a major impact. And I think just the anxiety, the stress of life, of having a family, of not knowing how long this is going to go on, you know, all of that makes this such a difficult experience. And that's the experience of everyone in the population. When you have a mental illness, when you're dealing with anxiety, depression, or some of the common mental illnesses, this whole situation is an awful lot worse. So the inequalities that already exist in society are very much magnified, not only by COVID itself, but by the government responses to COVID. So I think that IOLS gives us the opportunity to find out exactly what impact it's having on people, but also to look at what solutions they're putting in place and what methods they're using to try and cope and trying to keep themselves well as they go through this really difficult period.
Thank you. And then that's really, it's really helpful and useful to hear about, you know, just turning that around, like 80% of your wages on furlough, but actually it's a 20% pay cut. And I think just thinking about things like that is just so important. It's easy to think, oh, 80% is fine, isn't it? And there are other things that are probably going on for people, like, for example, when people aren't very well digitally connected, if that's the way to access health services primarily, then people can struggle. And
yeah, I mean, it's such a big issue. I mean, obviously we've been moving towards kind of telehealth and technology enabled healthcare for a long time, but like many things, COVID has very much sped up the pace of that change, and it all happened over a couple of months. And I think we need to be very careful about this. Again, for a lot of people, there are real pluses to digital healthcare and online appointments. And in the Highlands of Scotland, for example, where the nearest hospital may be 3 hours away, we've all been to that kind of routine follow-up appointment where you travel for ages to get to the hospital. You see somebody for 10 minutes and they say, yeah, everything's okay, get on with it. And if you have 5 or 6 hours traveling on top of that really takes up a whole day of your life. Whereas when you do something like that simply online, it's so much easier. But I think we forget that a lot of people don't have access to technology or aren't confident about using technology. So, we have to be careful that we don't end up with a sort of two-tier service where if you can use video appointments, you get a very good, very quick service. Whereas if you're still either have to have or prefer to have face-to-face appointments, you get a lesser service. And I think patient choice always has to be at the centre of that discussion. So I think a lot of people have discovered that using technology is perhaps to their benefit, but I think we need to think very carefully about how we enable that. And it's not good enough just to say, we'll send you a link and it'll all be fine. Because even lots of people who perhaps use email and internet regularly, that's very different from installing and setting up Microsoft Teams on your computer and joining Teams and all this sort of thing. And not everyone has the confidence to do that. So I think that there are, again, pros in this, but we have to look at some of the cons as well and look at how we can enable everyone to take part so that the benefits are as wide as possible.
Thank you. And very wise words, I think, there, that we have to take everybody into account and think about what's going to be best for the individual rather than having a generic one-size-fits-all strategy. So it's been really good to have you sitting on the sofa today, Gordon. Is there anything else you'd like to say to sum up before we leave?
I think we're in a really difficult time right now. We know lockdown, well, it's just been extended in England. We have a range of slightly different restrictions in Scotland, but I think we're all still going to be living under these restrictions or something like them for a good number of weeks, if not months yet. I think we all have a responsibility to find out how we can best support people to get through these difficult times and to make sure that their physical and mental health stays as strong as possible. So there's lots to be done. There's lots of interesting things to find out, and hopefully with project like the Owls project, we'll find out exactly what people need, and we can then feed those recommendations into the system, and hopefully enhance the support that everybody gets. So there's lots to do.
Thanks, Gordon, and thank you for coming on the sofa today.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.